Good morning, everyone. It's great to be back with you, even if we're online again for this theme visit. I want to go back over a couple of the things we talked about at the beginning of the year, and I hope they made some sense to you, and I hope you are able to think about them when you're working these days. The first thing that we talked about up here was refocusing. And if you remember, we talked about there's so much information and data available to our brains every second. And what we need to do is be able to focus, refocus, and create that circuit in our brain where we're able to bring our focus back to our learning. Remember, that involves controlling your attentional field, and that means everything that you can that's outside of you and everything that you can that is inside of you. And when you do that, and when you can continually be able to get better and better of bringing your focus back when your mind wanders, that creates that circuit in your brain where it will get easier and easier, and it will be a system for your brain to be able to do. The second thing that we talked about last time was about learning smarter. And if you remember, we said we know now that there are very definite things that we can do when we're learning to maximize the ease of our learning and the amount of time that we need to spend. We said one of them was spaced practice, and that it was so important to take a task, divide it up over time, and then go back and work on it a little bit at a time over a period of days, or it could be weeks or months. But when we work on it that way, we allow our brain to help, because when we are sleeping at night, our brain is still working. There's almost as much electric activity in your brain at night as there is during your waking hours. And your brain is busy and it's cleaning things out, it's sorting, it's organizing, and that hippocampus is going to organize some of your memories for you. We talked about using a notes format, and that the very best thing that you could do when you study is to use those notes and to practice it like a test, self-testing, instead of the rereading and the highlighting. Those things work, but if we want to optimize our chances for learning something easily, we want to use that notes format and really study by self-testing. Remember, if someone tells you, if you have a teacher that tells you what's going to be on the test, that is just like gold. That just, you can do your notes and then you can practice. And if you remember, I showed you some notes last time, and I've got a couple notes for this time too, and we're going to talk about how we might use them today. So our new theme up here down at the bottom is start now. And that might sound weird to start now because we're almost halfway through our school year. But what I really mean by that is that big important topic of being able to get yourself going and sustain your motivation. And I think we've all probably, when we have something that's been a less pleasurable or a more unpleasant task, where we have procrastinated. Procrastinating, remember, is putting off a task that you might find hard to do or unpleasant. And it's something that we all can do, but if you get in a habit of procrastinating, it's really important to know why that happens and how to get yourself out of it. The word actually procrastination comes from the Latin word pro, forward, and crastinatus, till the next day. So putting something off to another time that you should be doing, delaying a task that you need to do but do not want to do. So let's talk about where that happens in the brain. I'm going to get our brain over here. And if you remember last time, I kind of gave you a little teaser saying we were going to talk about the limbic system this time. So I'm going to open our brain up to the middle. And involved in the limbic system are really 3 or 4 really important areas. We have our amygdala. Remember, we've talked about that emotional center for your brain. We have the hippocampus, which is our long-term memory, and we have the thalamus. So the amygdala, the emotions, the hippocampus, and the thalamus and hypothalamus, which helps to regulate your emotions, that's called the limbic system. And it's like a pleasure center of your brain. It's doing something that feels good in the moment. That involves our limbic system. Now, how does our limbic system get us to procrastinate? Well, you can imagine that our limbic system is at odds with our prefrontal cortex. Because remember, our prefrontal cortex, that's our thinking, that's our planning part of our brain. For us, evolutionarily as human beings, this is a newer developing part of the brain. And it's what separates us from other animals and other mammals in particular. It's the part of your brain that gets the job done. You know how when you say you're thinking, that's the motion that you do where you tap that side of your brain? That's because we're talking about that prefrontal cortex. Now, that prefrontal cortex, though, is really kind of opposite of this limbic system. So here's our thinking and planning, and here's our limbic system over here saying, oh, we just want to feel good. We want to make sure we're feeling comfortable. And this is a part of our brain that's actually been around and been strong for a really long time. So when we're thinking of procrastinating, we're actually talking about a little bit of a struggle or a tussle between our prefrontal cortex that wants us to keep going and this pleasure center, this limbic part of our brain that wants us to have fun and feel good. So here's what happens. When you do something that brings you pleasure in the moment, that causes you then to put off doing the things that maybe are less pleasant that you need to do. And it really becomes what we call a habit loop. That's what procrastination really is. It starts out, you have some sort of task that you know you need to do, but it's not inherently something that you're looking forward to doing. Maybe it's getting organized, maybe it's cleaning out your desk, maybe it's doing something in your classroom, maybe it's doing something at home. Whatever it is, it's a little bit of an unpleasant task, so you don't want to do it. So when you think about doing that task, the feelings that you get of, oh, I don't want to do it, it's going to be so hard. That's that limbic system talking to you, saying, oh, well, but you don't want to do that right now because it's going to be hard. It's not going to feel good to do. So then what do? Well, if your limbic system wins over there, you do something else instead. You put off doing that task and you do something else. That brings you pleasure in the moment. I know sometimes for me it can be, oh, I'm going to go, well, I'll stop. Maybe I'll go have a snack. And after the snack, then I'll feel like doing this. Well, you know how that works. That does not happen, does it? So our limbic system here says, well, do something else right now. You can always do that later. So we do something else. But then guess what? How we start to feel is really anxious now. We're anxious. We're feeling panicky. We're feeling a little bit guilty because we didn't do the thing that we knew we needed to be doing. So what do? We have that big task that we need to do, but now we really don't want to do it. Now we're stressed. We really feel uncomfortable. And now we really don't want to do it even more. So what do? That limbic system, if it wins, it says, well, don't do it now. You could really do this tomorrow. You really wouldn't have to do it today. And so you say, okay, well, I'm going to do something then that brings me pleasure right now. I think I'll play a video game for a while. After I'm done playing with the video game, then I'll feel like doing my work. So what procrastination is, friends, is just a habit that your brain gets started doing. And just like we can set up that circuit in our brain to help us learn to refocus and get better and better at it, we can change that circuit in our brain that causes us to procrastinate. If we don't do anything about it, just like that other circuit that we set up in our brain, what's going to happen is that we are going to do it more and more. And the more we procrastinate, the more we're setting up that circuit in our brain that's going to keep us procrastinating the next time and the next time and the next time. So what we need to do now is think of a way, what can we do to break that loop of procrastination? Because every time we repeat it, it's going to get stronger. And guess what? For people who are real procrastinators, it's usually something that's really stressful. You get that pleasure that you feel in the moment, but most of the time, when you're not just doing that thing that's pleasurable, you feel more and more stress. They even say that they think procrastinators sometimes have weaker immune systems, that they sleep more poorly, and that sometimes they kind of have a nervous stomach. So all of those things, even though we're feeding that pleasure center, that limbic system in the short term, we're making it a lot harder and more uncomfortable for ourselves in the long term. So how do we outsmart this from happening? Do you remember the word we talked about, neuroplasticity? And we said that means that our brain is just this miracle that we can continue to work on and shape. And what we want to do is to make this prefrontal cortex really strong so that it is able to kind of quiet that limbic system down, and we can use it to our advantage. What you can do, one of the biggest things you can do is to do the worst thing first. So when you have something to do that's unpleasant, think about the part of whatever it is that's the most unpleasant. Do that first. There's a saying for that based on a Mark Twain quote, and it's called eat the big frog first. And the quote is, if the first thing you do in the morning is eat the frog, then you can continue your day with the satisfaction of knowing this is probably the worst thing that will happen to you. Now, in my case, I've been doing some physical therapy for an injury to my hip. And I have this list of exercises to do every day. And out of this list of 12 exercises, there are 3 of them I hate to use the word hate, but I just hate doing them. There's nothing fun about them. I'm not very good at doing them. And so in an effort to do the worst thing first, eat the big frog first, if I can, when I go to do those exercises, if I can pick those 3 horrible ones that I find unpleasant, do them first, get them out of the way, then the other 9 things I can find more pleasurable. Number 1, okay, eat the big frog first, do the worst thing first. Second thing, split something up. That task that's uncomfortable that you see so big, split it up. Split it up into little chunks. Make little chunks out of it and commit to doing the first one. Now, what I did for myself was I made a chart, and I took all those exercises, split them up, and I have a chart that I do, and I put the date on there, and I put a dot for every one that I do. So it's not that I look and I say, okay, oh my gosh, this is going to take me 35 minutes. I look at those first 3, I do them, and I put dots next to them as soon as I've done them on my chart. And it's kind of a little reward that I give myself. Another thing that you can do if you're a procrastinator is do what's called, even a short-term procrastinator, do what's called the 10-minute trick. Make yourself commit to 10 minutes. I don't know about you, but I think for any of us, 10 minutes isn't a huge amount of time. Like if I said I'm going to sit down for an hour versus 10 minutes, and commit that during that 10 minutes, I am going to work as hard as I possibly can. Now, chances are when you get to the end of the 10 minutes, if you have been working as hard as you can and you've done the worst thing first, then you're probably going to feel more like continuing. And you can plan a small reward in there. When I was doing those exercises, I had remembered that I had ordered something that I like to eat at the holiday time. Most people don't like fruitcake, but I love it. And so I'd ordered one for us, and I thought, well, okay, if I do all of these, when I get to the end, I'm going to have a small piece of fruitcake. And that was my treat for doing it. So you can do the worst thing first, break things up into smaller chunks, try that 10 minutes of really hard work, plan your rewards. And then the last one was one I read about it. And if you're a person that puts off putting things up and can be kind of a clutter bug, which I am, someone said, whenever you have something to do, no matter how small it is, if it can be done in 1 minute or less, do it immediately. And I've surprised myself at how many things around the house or at my desk I can do in 1 minute or less. When I come in at night, we always take our shoes off at our house because we don't walk on them in the house. And so usually by Wednesday, there's maybe 3 pair of shoes in the laundry room when I come in. But you know what I've started doing? What I do is I come in, I take my shoes off, and I look at them. I say, can I, in 1 minute, pick up my shoes and go put them in the closet? And I can. And so that's what I do. And I found that my desk is neater, my closet is more organized because I do things that can be done in 1 minute. I do them immediately without even thinking about it. So I hope that our presentation today about starting now helps you understand that starting now means that that's the only time we've got to do anything, and that we can strengthen this prefrontal cortex so that we can override that limbic system that's going to want us to procrastinate or put something off. We can strengthen that prefrontal cortex, and then that really becomes a habit for us. It was great to visit with you today, and I'll look forward to coming back to see you after winter break, and have a great day, everyone. Thank you.